Dragons are, well, I mean, it's in the name. They're a huge part of Dungeons and Dragons, and I've noticed just from some of the art that they've made some changes. So let's go ahead and see what they have to say about that.
What would Dungeons and Dragons be without dragons? We have
Just
some pretty
dungeons.
significant changes that are really exciting, but also we're talking about the lore of dragons. Tell me about what has changed, what is new.
Dragons were the focus of our work for the new Monster Manual from the beginning.
Focus.
We not only wanted to make sure that their art was thrilling, we wanted the
Definitely that.
storytelling about them to be on point for their wonderful legacy in D&D, but we also especially wanted the gameplay to be ferocious, majestic, terrifying, and all of the other adjectives that people associate with dragons. We really wanted to make sure
Nice.
that our dragons this time around, especially at the higher challenge ratings, were really bringing the hurt. And we knew that at lower CRs, our dragons were already bringing plenty of suffering for those who fought them, as well as plenty of encouragement for those who allied with them. Since, for those who don't know, a big part of D&D is we have the chromatic dragons, who are traditionally villainous, greedy, out to rule the world or destroy parts of it, or lurk around and cause trouble. And then you have the metallic dragons, whose role in the D&D multiverse has often been to encourage and bolster heroic folk who go up against the forces of evil. Now, that doesn't mean you can't fight a metallic dragon, because even a well-meaning dragon sometimes has a really bad day or a bad century, because dragons live a long time, and you might even end up find yourself in a scuffle with a metallic dragon.
Yeah, I would
Whatever kind of dragon it is, chromatic or metallic, or some of the other types of dragons that also appear in the book, we wanted to make sure that as you went up in the challenge ratings, those dragons really became harder and harder. We did that not only by taking a fresh look at the dragons' hit points, the amount of damage they were dealing, but in many ways, more importantly, we looked at what are they capable of doing mechanically. So you're going to see, particularly in many of the adult and ancient dragons, that they now have spellcasting incorporated into their stat blocks. Spellcasting has always been a part of the lore of chromatic and metallic dragons, particularly as those dragons get older. And in the 2014 Monster Manual was an option, but this time we wanted to make it much easier for a dungeon master to terrify their player characters by having that dragon not just exhale its breath weapon and then spend several rounds batting you around with its bite and its claws.
Right.
But oh no, did it just cast fireball at us?
Yeah.
Or in the case of the black dragon, did it just cast vitriolic sphere?
Yeah.
Which is one of the new spells in the 2024 Player's Handbook. A number of those spells are in that book, by the way, so that we could enhance dragons in the Monster Manual.
That's fantastic. Dragons were something that I tended to not use too often because they could be a little boring. Like you said, you just kind of use that breath attack and then just swat, bite, hit them with the tail, shit like that. And it's not that it was not fun or not dangerous. They were still very dangerous adversaries to throw at your party. And a lot of time, it causes deaths in fights because people aren't careful. But it does get a tad boring and repetitive. So for them to have spellcasting incorporated now, instead of you just as a DM having to try and figure out, well, I want them to cast spells, but what spells, what type of spells, this and that. That's great. I love this. And I mean the art. I mean, whew, that art's fantastic. I love it.
We've talked before that one of the advantages of building the 3 new core books as essentially one giant book is that we could add things in one book that were going to help one of the other 2 books. And some of our spell selections did exactly that. You can also see our black dragons are going to be able to cast Melf's Acid Arrow. But we went even
That's rough.
further.
That's gonna be
We
rough.
looked at a number of the lair actions that our dragons had before and took the spiciest ones and moved them into the stat blocks themselves.
Right.
In most cases, we turned them into some really fun legendary actions.
I love the idea of that. My players, since most of them are veteran players, they know better than to fight a dragon in its lair if they can help it. So they would come up with smart ways of pulling them out of their lair so that they don't get their lair actions. And while I love that, right, I think the ingenuity alone was great. It's still kind of bumming when you lose the layer actions. So for some of them, I don't know which ones, and I doubt they're going to tell us which ones, but for even some of the layer actions to be incorporated into the stat block now so they can actually do them as legendary actions, whew, I'm getting excited.
The 2014 dragons, their legendary actions often amounted to, they did some more swatting you with their claw or biting you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was about it. Now, you're going to see things like the black dragon summoning a swarm of insects that bedevil you.
Okay.
Or you're going to see the blue dragon, once it gets old enough that it has legendary actions, causing a sonic boom that casts the shatter spell on a group of people, or suddenly going into cloaked flight where it just goes invisible and flies a certain distance. Every single one of these dragon types has some new shtick like that is specific to that particular dragon's personality.
Yeah, it's all on theme.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Another example going on the metallic dragon side is because metallic dragons, yes, can be ferocious in battle, but often want to stop battle. So one of the new legendary actions for gold dragons is they just banish you.
Yeah.
and so if you get into battle with a gold dragon, be prepared. There might be someone each round who there is a chance of they just were sent somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because the gold dragon just does not want to deal with them right now. And what this means is that even
Speaking from 2014 at least, the priest is going to, or the cleric is going to get banished. They are, they're not fun to deal with as the DM. Not only can they keep the entire party alive, they can dish out serious damage. So that's where that banish is going. I can almost guarantee it. So maybe just don't pick a fight with a golden dragon. They're usually an ally anyway. You can usually talk your way out of those fights. If you've got a bard, let the bard talk to him, and just kind of mind your business, and everything will be all right. Just saying.
People who've been playing 5th edition for the last 10 years, when they go up against dragons, they are going to be encountering one new thing after another, particularly when they get to the adults and the ancient dragons. Now, we also have brought new mechanical fun to the dragon turtle, to the wyvern, to kobolds, who now are officially dragons.
Oh, nice.
And
That's super
that
cool.
isn't just a flavor adjustment that we've made, but it has mechanical consequences because
Like
it means
dragon breath.
Charm Person doesn't work on kobolds anymore.
Oh, shit, I didn't even think
and
about that.
we wanted to do this both from a lore standpoint, but also from a mechanical standpoint, so that we could really highlight more what distinguishes, say, a kobold from a goblin, or a goblin from a kenku, or right on down the line. And we've talked in another video about there are a number of creature type changes in the book, and that affects even the dragon family, since the most humanoid-like dragons in the monster manual, kobolds, are now literally of the dragon type.
And then that we also have in there, we've got shadow dragons, we've got half dragons, and lore about them.
When you look at the stats for half dragons and also for the shadow dragon, people are going to see brand new stat blocks. So something that we decided to do this time for the half dragon is really develop it as a complete monster. In 2014, we gave you a stat block, but it was really a collection of templated traits collected into a stat block. This time around, the half dragon is a monster in its own right. Same thing with the shadow dragon, where we have fleshed it out into a full type of dragon with its own new type of breath weapon, and we now have two types of shadow dragons. We have a juvenile shadow dragon and an older one, because frankly, we just think having this Shadowfell dragon is so cool, we wanted more of it. And we wanted you to be able to experience it at more levels. And so that's why we now have two types of shadow dragons in the new Monster Manual.
Also, like, fantastic art and multiple cases of art for each of these dragons, which is exciting. I love the different ways we represent the green dragon. Obviously, the black dragon's fantastic, always seeing that melted face. But specifically, the context of things is great for me as a dungeon master, because when I'm reading about this is how they act as a youngling, this is how they act as an adult, this is how they act as an ancient. Like, this is where they kind of are at in their lives and how they interact with their environments, and each dragon is different.
Absolutely, and it's going to be something that you're going to hear us mention again and again while we're talking about these monsters, is that the art is just as much about the narrative and the story and the play experience of these creatures as any other part of the book. When you look at the different pieces of art throughout the 2025 Monster Manual, you're going to see this is how it lives, this is the layers it's in, this is how it behaves, helping to give DMs suggestions for here's how I can use this critter. Perfect example is one that you just mentioned there with the green dragon. Green dragons are known for being sinister and sneaky and ambushers and like camouflaging themselves. So when you see the adult green dragon, instead of having this in your face coming at you like slicing through adventurers, the depiction of the green dragon is it snaking its way through this swampy pool where there's adventurers who are completely unaware of it, boating above it, not cognizant that they're about to get ambushed by this green dragon. You see this at all age categories as well, because continuing the example with the green dragon, there's a green dragon wyrmling there. You get the sense there that it's this sneaky, sinuous, sinister little menace. And I'm saying little, but like so often we think of wyrmlings as being like, oh, maybe it's just these little guys. No, wyrmlings are the same size as you and I are.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's what really comes through on this.
Yes. And then even with the ancient dragons, for each one of the metallic dragons and the chromatic dragons, you get this gorgeous full-page image that shows some of the most powerful monsters in Dungeons & Dragons in their full splendor or dread, doing the thing that makes them so iconic, whether it's a red dragon terrifying like a small legion of knights, or a gold dragon just being awesome, or like in the example of the green dragon, this deep in the woodlands, like sinister magical mastermind who you can see is like manipulating forces off in the distance.
I might be getting this wrong, but it's either the green or the blue dragon. But like, you know, one of the dragons as an example of a wyrmling is actually, it may actually be not subservient, but like working with other villains to learn from them.
Yes.
As a wyrmling. That kind of context was really fun to read.
We want to make sure that each one of the different types of dragons feels like there's specific adventures associated with each one of them. It's not just this is a green dragon and this is what a green dragon does. A green dragon wyrmling, a young green dragon, an adult green dragon, an ancient green dragon, they all have their own agendas. They all have their own plots, which at the lowest CRs and with the youngest of them, you know, might be more territorial or part of a small area. But as they get stronger, as they advance, it's more regional, it's more global, and then potentially even more multiversal.
And that's something that does come up with like several of the ancient dragons. Is some of them have a multiversal approach.
Yes.
So some of them, like the white dragon, just wants its territory, and that's kind of it. The red dragon thinks it's the best dragon and best monster in the entire universe, and that's its agenda. Blue dragon also has like interplanar plans at some point, but that goes for the metallic dragons as well. And that's what I really love about this is you're kind of giving us a character.
Yes.
At every stage of their life and what they and again, like you mentioned, the wormlings are not just wormlings, because so often I'm dating myself, but Dragon Slayer, I think of wormlings and they're these puppets that meet a very grisly end and don't have any personality. But these are like very intelligent creatures that already are working in this environment that you can interact with.
And yeah, it was important to us, not only in the game mechanics, but also in the art, to drive home that wormlings are dangerous. I think sometimes in the past when we've depicted wormlings, they've been sometimes kind of cute. And we actually made sure, especially with the chromatics this time, most of them are not cute. Because these are things that low-level adventurers are going to face off against.
Hideous.
And again, these are not like cute little creatures. This is a person-sized
This is a threat.
lizard with wings that can exhale fire on you.
That sounds adorable.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
This crocodile has wings and is smarter than you.
That sounds adorable.
Exactly.
Too. Crocodile with wings.
As you were talking, one of the things that was really kind of warming my heart is that at what you were describing, Wes, about the personality of like a green dragon, and you know, Todd, also you mentioning the insidious nature of what they do, that's in the game mechanics, and much more so than a decade ago. Because now, especially adult and ancient green dragons, they have the Mind Spike spell. And they also are able to, when they get to a higher level, cast Modify Memory and Gesh to actually cause you to have to do something for a long period of time. And this means that, you know, for those of us who love like Cyan from the Dragonlance Chronicles, we wanted to make sure that that sort of storytelling was represented in the stat blocks themselves. And you're going to see that in the green dragons, the blue dragons, the bronze dragons, and all down the line.
And again, like we talk about personality, and not everyone knows all the personalities, and we don't need to go really deep into it, but historically, like red dragons, like I mentioned before, they really think they're the best of dragon kind. They extremely territorial. They like the gold. They are very quick to anger. Smaug being a very classic example of like the personality of a red dragon. I would argue, like they're always a threat, always dangerous.
Yes, these are the real like megalomaniacs. It's like they want to control, and what they can't control, they destroy.
How would you define the personality of a blue dragon?
Oh, I mean, blue dragons are my favorite. So I mean, they're the lawful evil ones. They're the ones where they want to control everything, but they will do it by manipulating others, by taking over regions, by like forming armies. I mean, they're sort of the ultimate lawful evil villains, where it's just like, I want to control and dominate everything, and if I can't do it through my organizations and spreading my power, then I'll just use my incredible like power and magical might to do
all the way to like multiversal empires.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And you can, a lot of those personality traits are echoed in these sort of environmental associations that the dragons have and their abilities. So the blue dragons, with their far-spanning plots, well, that connects to the fact that blue dragons are associated with being the highest up in the sky, and the ones who call lightning down from the sky. They are the ones way above watching, whereas red dragons are associated often with environmental destruction, like volcanoes and eruptions of lava.
They're that force of nature.
Yes.
Exactly. And we also, another example of us connecting personality of the different dragon types to the mechanics is what we've done in the different dragons with their Frightful Presence ability. In 2014, the dragons consistently had this frightful presence ability. But this time, we wanted to explore more tailored versions of that or entirely different effects in the dragons. So, there are still some dragons that do strike fear into people, but thinking of the red dragon is the most tyrannical of the chromatic dragons. And so rather than having the red dragon strike fear into people, we instead have the red dragon with a commanding presence where the red dragon can actually growl out a command, a magical command, and get people to do things. And that will also help make encounters with these different types of dragons very different from each other. Because again, one dragon might be, growling commands at people, another one is terrifying people, another one is banishing people. They all have some way to control the battlefield that goes beyond just dealing damage. And again, it was a lot of fun for us.
I like the fact that they're changing it for certain dragons. I don't know. I think with how evil and strong and tyrannical the red dragon is, they didn't need to change that one. But it's cool what they did with it. I get it. It makes sense. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't disagree with it either. And it is going to be a fun mechanic to work around and work through, especially for the players that aren't buying the new monster manual, so they don't know until it's too late. But it's cool. It's fun. I like it. I like it a lot.
To go beyond just striking fear into people.
Yeah, everything feels way tailor-made, way more tailor-made now. And it's going to be great to see players who are perhaps used to the old versions of dragons be a little bit surprised, which is always my favorite thing. They're like, oh, I don't remember doing that. I'm like, well, welcome to 2024, 2025.
Yeah, well, because one example of that, and I touched on this earlier about spell casting in many of the adult and ancient dragons. That's going to create situations where you might have people who were used to fighting the dragons before, and they know, okay, watch out for the breath weapon, and okay, the dragon used its breath weapon. It's now recharging, and it just has melee attacks. If we just stand hundreds of feet away and shoot at it, we're fine. Oh no, that dragon just snapped its fingers and there was an explosion all around us. So we also had that in mind, is we wanted the dragons to have, especially the adult and ancient ones, more tactical versatility.
Basically, they've been watching a lot of content creators here on YouTube that play D&D, making shorts about how to cheese these very dangerous monsters. And while if you break down what they're saying you can do, it doesn't really work out the way they're saying. They're saying it mostly for the views, for the content. Some of them work, kind of, but with these changes, they don't work anymore, and that's fantastic. There shouldn't really be a way to cheese something as dangerous as a dragon. Whether they've got some massive range on their spells or they've got increased fly speed so that it's harder to stay, out of their range. There's several things they could have done. Giving them innate spellcasting is, in my opinion, one of the best things they could have done. I hope that they also increase their fly speed a little bit, because that would help too. But people are gonna have to find new ways to try and cheese dragons, and it's just not gonna work. Hopefully, famous last words. But we'll see.
And so it is going to be also more difficult now to outfox a dragon, because the dragons in their stat blocks have more tools now for dealing with different tactical situations. They're now going to be able to fight you if you're way, way over there, or if you're up close. And so again, watch out, be prepared, and beware of fighting them in their layers, because the other thing that's new for all of these metallic and chromatic dragons is they get to use legendary resistance more often if they're in their lair, and they get to use their legendary actions more often if they're in their lair.
Nice.
And so that too is going to make lair encounters with many of these dragons even more terrifying than they were before.
Good.
And more of a reason to get them out of their lairs.
Yes, yes. Try to trick the dragon to fight you somewhere other than its lair.
At another locale.
Yeah.
I feel like all the dragons are leaning more into their personality. Like the black dragon is a good example. Again, you mentioned like they are more about death and decay, destroying like the stonework around them or ancient buildings, melting them down with their acid over time. But then undead are more and more attracted to their presence as well, and they kind of gain a following.
Absolutely.
Very, very creepy creatures, and that's all on theme for the black dragon.
Well, you'll even see this in some of the redesigns that we've done of the various dragons. The art team has put a ton of effort into making sure that the 2025 versions of these dragons really are distinctive, but also get these moods across. So even when you look at the black dragon, it's cadaverous. It's got these spines to it. The entire thing has this unsettling sort of necromantic vibe to it. And as soon as you put it into its natural environment, these swamps, the idea that it would be followed by like the dead crawling out of these ruins that it lurks in, it seems perfectly natural. And you see that for every one of the chromatics and the metallics. We've really put a lot of effort into making sure that each one of these different types of dragons, at a glance, it looks distinctive, but then also feels natural in the environments that they are commonly found in, but then also that they look like they would be doing the things that they're most commonly known for.
I really like the comments about the gold dragon in the description of like they are almost undercover but looking for evil, even though they are somewhat solitary and like often live in like dead civilizations sometimes or amongst structures like that. They are on the outlook. They may be polymorphed in humanoid form, looking for adventure or at least to right some wrong.
Well, I think something that ends up being a challenge for a lot of DMs is I've got these 5 incredible, powerful dragons, but they're all good alignment. What do I do with them?
Yeah.
So, first of all, you don't have to use dragons in your campaign. I know the way he said that, he wasn't necessarily saying you have to use all the monsters in the monster manual or all the dragons in the monster manual. You don't. Second of all, you see it in anime all the time, which is why I always recommend for DMs to at least dabble in watching anime. Even people with the best of intentions can be evil. I mean, the saying is the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? It doesn't matter how good intentioned these dragons are, they can still be considered evil and do things that are not great because they think that they're helping. They think that this is the correct path to help the entire area around them, all living things around them. So it doesn't matter how good aligned a person or a monster is. If you want them to be the BBEG, there's always a way. And it's not always, my players are just going to play villains. No. Some of the best villains are good guys doing bad things because they think it's the right thing to do. If you want to use a metallic dragon and you want them to be the BBEG, you just gotta think about it like that. What good thing do you want them to do? And how many bad things do you want them to do? How bad things do you want them to do in the pursuit of whatever their good goal is,
So, like, for every one of these different dragons, for every one of these different metallic dragons, we want to give you examples and plot hooks and ideas for these are what these dragons might do. This is how they might be allies to you. This is how they might work in a larger society with some of the narrative notes. This is how you might come into conflict with some of them. Perfect example is the gold dragon, because even that one, while the ancient gold dragon is really depicted as this like incredible force, but like sort of like powerful but serene, and the young version is sort of more elusive looking or more wily looking, you've got the picture of the adult one where it's clearly guarding like some sort of like portal or gate or something. Just because you might want to go through that gate doesn't mean the gold dragon, who has been guarding this for centuries, wants you to. So there's a lot of ways to help DMs build adventures using these metallic dragons as well.
And we've gone into the personality of, I believe, all the evil dragons. I don't think we missed one.
Maybe the white.
Yeah, well, we mentioned they are they are just sort of the beastly ones.
Yes.
They are the most primordial of the dragons.
That's one of the reasons that I love like the art for them as well, though, because even them,
They look like a bull.
they look like
They look like a
so
thug.
bestial. Like they are attacking like a predator.
With that mouth shut, it looks
and that's
like a
again,
thug.
like Jeremy has said, is
The big
built
thumb
into
wings.
like all of their
Don't get me wrong, it's
stats,
still
their
cool
lore,
looking,
and
even for
the
a thug,
art
but
supports that
big
so
thumb
well.
with wings.
What, can you tell me the personality of a copper dragon and what copper dragons tend to be about?
So the copper dragons are more about building community, and these are one of the dragons that I'm so pleased with how they ended up looking in the final product, because you can see that they're more about supporting groups, building relationships, putting together networks. And something that you'll see with the ancient copper dragon is that you can see that they've invited a whole bunch of other dragon wormlings into their lair,
adorable.
and they've got
One, those are super adorable. Two, the white dragon wormling, at least it looks like white dragon wormling, still looks like a thumb. And why is there a unicorn?
this great collection of little guys that they're watching out for.
And see, that's what I mean by hooks. Like you mentioned, like these hooks are so great for you to involve good aligned. It's so easy to kind of involve evil aligned dragons, or chromatic dragons, but like for the metallic dragons, these are great hooks.
I think
for why they
Jeremy's
should be there.
often referred to the copper dragons as the fairy tale dragons.
Yes, yeah, and we show that visually with them with all the little baby dragons around them, but we also work that into their stat blocks. So the adult and ancient copper dragons, one of their new legendary actions is their giggling magic, where they can mess with people on the battlefield by just causing them to stand there giggling.
That's right.
And also something else we've done in the stat blocks for all of the metallic dragons is we've given them more flexibility in using their 2 breath weapons. In the past, all of the metallics, and this goes all the way back to first edition D&D, they had 2 different ways they could use their breath weapon. There was usually a damaging version and a non-damaging version. What we've done for the first time is we've made it so that those 2 different breath weapon types are no longer on a shared recharge. And so what that means is that the metallic dragons can actually be exhaling things more often than chromatic dragons can, but their damaging breath weapons are still as limited as they were before, but they're going to get to use some of their non-damaging options more often than they could before.
But they're just as balanced.
Yes.
Between the 2 different dragon types.
And it was quite a feat to actually get the metallic dragons to be balanced, because their combination of abilities is actually much more complex mechanically than the chromatic dragons, because the chromatic dragons just bring tremendous hurt, whereas the metallic dragons all have a much bigger mix of damaging and non-damaging options. And so we had to weave the needle very carefully to make sure that the metallic dragons would all still be a satisfying encounter no matter which combo of damaging or non-damaging abilities they decide to use.
What are some of the personality traits of, say, a bronze dragon? What are they, like, attracted to?
So the bronze dragons are more about imagination, but also protection. They're often associated with coastal environments, and this is something that, again, you end up seeing right from the art, where we start illustrating they're protecting communities, they're like saving people, they're fending off monsters. There's a completely wahoo piece of an adult that's fighting like a megalodon.
That does remind me about the dragon turtle, because I believe not totally the other dragon, the previous dragon, not totally on board with piracy, but the dragon turtle specifically mentions that it may be totally down for some piracy or be friends with pirates.
Absolutely.
So I like the sense that there may be some dragon friction happening in the ocean in terms of what piracy is. And that art for the dragon turtle is absolutely amazing as well.
Oh, yeah. Just using its breath over like an entire ship.
Yeah.
That piece of art is a great example of what we've done for a number of the gargantuan monsters in the book, and that is showing that gargantuan, when it comes to a creature size, doesn't really have a ceiling. Because the other size categories have a fixed space that creatures of that size occupy. That isn't true for gargantuan. Gargantuan has a floor for how big it is, a minimum size for the creature, a minimum space that it occupies, but there's no maximum for how big a gargantuan creature can be, and so you definitely get a glimpse of that with that dragon turtle piece of art, because it is massive, the way it looms over that ship.
And very quickly, we've got, what are the personality types and kind of traits of a brass dragon?
So the brass dragons are desert-dwelling dragons, and they often end up sharing stories, but then also investigating. You'll end up seeing them like plumbing these ancient ruins, looking for tales. And again, this is something that we see in the art with like a brass dragon that's clearing out like a ruin full of mummies, but then also you've got the ancient who is clearly protecting a whole group of adventurers from like a desert sandstorm.
And then we've got the silver dragon, which is, again, one of those interplanar dragons. Once it's ancient, it may be involved in a lot of different shenanigans at a much higher level. Tell me about silver dragons.
So silver dragons in a lot of ways are sort of like the knights in shining armor of dragon kind. Like, they get a little bit more martial, but they're also the ones that are out there questing against evil. So they'll be out there seeking.
Fun fact with silver dragons, if you're going to throw something that your players would have trouble fighting, that they might, party wipe on, and you don't want that, you could have them run into a mysterious adventurer that is also going to hunt that same monster, and it turns out after the fight, should that mysterious adventurer survive, it was a silver dragon that was polymorphed as a whatever. I know that's kind of like a cop-out. It is. But it's one of those things where you can use it as like a story arc to give them another quest line. But it's also a great way to let them fight something beyond their means without necessarily wiping them, so they can understand, oh, wow, we're not really as strong as we thought we were. Let's tone it down, maybe not fight everything that crosses our paths if we don't have to. It's something I've done in the past. Of course, I've also had ancient blue and black dragons polymorph as like kings and stuff, and try and trick the players into doing their evil bidding. But that's a trope that I like doing. It's fun for me, but not for everybody. So just food for thought.
Challenges even from a young age, and sometimes maybe getting in over their heads, and that's where they might need adventurers to help them out.
Yeah, you specifically mentioned that in the book too.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
So then, as they get into their adult and ancient ages, they start taking on more and more powerful threats that might even lead them beyond a world into the plains.
And what are their breath weapons again?
So the silver dragon has its traditional cold breath as well as its paralyzing breath.
Right.
And then with its new legendary actions, one of them, it can just chill someone in place with the hold monster spell. And then it also has a cold gale where it can cause this just blast of wind with one of its other new legendary actions. And so that's going to be bringing essentially this combination of like a snowstorm, but then also going, nope.
Yeah.
The Silver Dragon, sort of like the Red Dragon, has this commanding presence where, again, it can just like, no. you're going to just stand there for a moment.
And like you mentioned, the Silver Dragons getting over their head, there's like that sense of a little bit of arrogance, of a little overconfidence in their lives, and you can see where they're going into adulthood.
Yeah, and they're going to bring you along for their adventures whether you want to come or not.
That's, yeah, already I want a Silver Dragon to enlist you on an adventure and them to screw up. Which seems like a distinct possibility.
But also you could find yourself on the opposite end of a quest from a Silver Dragon.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that the story text throughout for the metallic dragons alludes to is that these dragons might be good, and they might be working for good in the world, but their goals are not always going to align with yours, and you could end up in a fight with them. And that's one reason why we work so.
That's a little bit of what they've done to change some of the dragons, and I mean overall, I'm thrilled to hear they've made some changes. I'm excited to see what all of the changes are. Obviously, there's a lot you can do with dragons. I mean, there was a lot you could do with dragons before, but now there's even more that you can do with dragons, and that's great. So whether you're throwing some metallic dragons into your campaign or some chromatic dragons or both, there's things you can do. Whether you're allying the metallic dragons or using them as the BBG, or if the chromatic dragons are just there for flavor, like they're flying off in the distance from time to time, destroying some cities, what have you. They're a useful tool to have, either combat-wise or just story-wise. And the fact that they've made some changes to those is fantastic. The few changes that they've talked about in this video, I love them. I don't really have anything to complain about with these dragons. They're great. So we'll touch more on that once the book actually comes out and I've got it in my hands. But until then, that's great. Be ready for more content coming real soon. I've been delving pretty deep into my Dungeon Master's Guide, so I do have some original content coming real soon, I promise. But until then, thanks for watching.